After hitting send, she discovered her criticism transformed a millionaire CEO's life forever. Sara Johnson sat hunched over her small kitchen table, the soft glow of her laptop barely illuminating the dark room. Her fingers trembled as she clicked send on the email that had consumed her thoughts for days. Her heart raced, not just from exhaustion after working 2 grueling jobs all week, but from the weight of her words. This was her chance to make a stand against the budget cuts threatening Kevin's school, the very foundation of their community. With a simple click, she had hurled her frustration at Henry Moore, the millionaire CEO who lived like a king while families like hers struggled to scrape by. As soon as she hit send, doubt gnawed at her insides. Would he even read it? But urgency clawed its way into her chest. The thought of their local school, a sanctuary where Kevin found safety and friendship, facing closure filled her with dread. Tears pricked her eyes as she remembered the warmth of the lunchroom, the laughter, the teachers who cared. Those gray walls had stood witness to her son's laughter, to her struggles, and her hopes for a better future. Sara wrestled with her mixed emotions, hope flickering like a candle's flame, but skepticism reigniting with every passing moment. Hours turned into days, but then, on a bright Tuesday morning, the news broke: Henry had read her letter. He was coming to the neighborhood. A buzz ran through the streets, curious whispers mingling with the scent of fried food and gasoline, doubt hovering like a dark cloud. Who does he think he is? One woman scoffed, shaking her head as she pushed her stroller past. But curiosity gripped them all. Perhaps this time, change was possible. Meanwhile, Henry walked through the neighborhood, shock flooding his senses: the cracked sidewalks, the overflowing trash cans, the weary faces etched with unyielding hope. Each step bore weight behind it, a looming question that gnawed at him: could he really make a difference? Distant voices called to him as he tried to engage with local business owners who met his enthusiasm with guarded caution. Why trust you? They asked, their grit and resilience as palpable as the heat rising from the sidewalk. But Henry was unyielding. He would earn their trust, he would reshape his image. At least, that was the goal. Then, as fate would have it, he crossed paths with Sara again. The air crackled with tension, the distance between their worlds palpable. She expressed her reservations, her protective instincts kicking in. You need to prove yourself before you can change anything here, she challenged, yet despite her fight, she couldn't shake the hope that their collaboration might benefit Kevin. But when she delved deeper into Henry's plans, a creeping realization took hold. His proposed changes threatened the local shops, the lifeblood of her community. A confrontation brewed, anger bursting forth as they hurl their fears at each other, obstacles born from wealth and hardship. Do you even know what we go through? Sara shouted, tears stinging her eyes. Henry faltered, the veiled truth of his privilege laid bare. It was raw, ugly, but they were unveiling something beautiful, a chance to transform not just a community but themselves. Sara and Henry recognized in that moment that real change requires listening, facing uncomfortable truths, and daring to find common ground in a world that often pushed them apart. As the dust settled from their explosive exchange, fear sparked in their hearts. Would their bridge to understanding hold, or would it crumble under the weight of their differences? They both knew, deep down, that they stood at a crossroads, with the future not just their own, but the entire community hanging precariously in the balance. Would they rise to the challenge, or would fear dictate their next steps? The sun rose bright and unyielding the next morning, casting long shadows on the streets where hope and uncertainty intertwined. Sara paced the kitchen, her restless energy clashing with the quiet around her. Each tick of the clock seemed to echo the tension that hung over her. The email was out there, and so was Henry. But what other truths lay hidden beneath the surface? Across town, Henry rode through the neighborhood in his luxury SUV, the polished interiors feeling oddly claustrophobic. He tapped his fingers against the steering wheel, each beat a reminder of the fears that spiraled within him. Sure, he had a vision, but visions meant little without the trust of those who needed them. He remembered Sara's words, her fierce determination carving their way into his mind. You need to prove yourself. He knew he had a mountain to climb, and that mountain was built from the very community he could help or shatter. The duality twisted in his guts as he approached the local diner, a favorite haunt for residents old and new. He understood that if he wanted their faith, he needed to take the plunge, roll up his sleeves, and engage in meaningful dialogue. Walking in, he was greeted by the familiar hiss of the grill and cheerful chatter. The scent of bacon and fresh coffee enveloped him. For a brief moment, nostalgia wrapped around him like a warm blanket. He had come to understand the power of meals shared, and the connections mended over simple conversations. "Hey, Henry!" a voice called from a far booth. It was Carl, the diner owner, a grizzled veteran of the American spirit, who had witnessed both triumphs and failures in the community. "What brings you here? You looking for a blueberry pie recipe or hoping for some honest chats?" Henry chuckled, though his heart raced. "A bit of both, actually. I realize I've got a lot of listening to do." Carl raised an eyebrow, clearly assessing him. "You said that before, didn't you? What's different now?" Henry took a breath and sat down, warmth enveloping him as he faced the man who held some of the town's collective history. "I made a promise to take your community seriously. I need your input. Maybe we can find some common ground on school funding and business support." Carl leaned back, crossing his arms. "Input from the top? You really think that's gonna change anything?" They locked eyes, and Henry felt the weight of unspoken histories behind Carl's gaze. "No, but if you open up, if we really talk, maybe we can avoid the misunderstandings that lead to a shattering divide." Meanwhile, at her table, Sara received a text from Henry. "Can we meet? I want to hear your thoughts." No plans, just conversation. Her heart beat faster. Could he really be sincere? Or was this just another superficial gesture? Worry churned in her stomach, and she glanced out the window at Kevin playing outside with other kids. She wanted the best for him, and yet, every gut feeling urged her to be cautious. What if Henry's charm was just a ploy to win favor? As she sat contemplating, a group of neighbors gathered in her living room. Faces illuminated with hope, fear, and a fierce determination to protect their community. "We can't afford to waste this chance," one of them said, her voice trembling but determined. "But we have to hold him accountable." Sara nodded, her resolve steeling. They would stand united, guarding their dreams fiercely while navigating this fragile situation. But tangled within all of it, a question nagged at her heart: could she really trust him enough to change everything? That evening, as the sun dipped low, edging the horizon with vibrant hues, both Sara and Henry prepared to meet. Unbeknownst to each other, they were stepping onto a precipice. It wasn't just about ideas anymore, it was about their intertwined fates and the fragile threads of hope. Would they find a path forward together, or were they destined to tear each other apart? With everything on the line, the next steps would determine if their bridge could withstand the weight of their differences or if it would shatter before it ever got built. The air crackled with the electricity of possibility, and both felt it. Would they be brave enough to meet that challenge head-on? Sara arrived at the little cafe where they had agreed to meet, the cozy ambience juxtaposing her swirling thoughts. The sound of her heartbeat echoed in her ears. She pushed through the door, the familiar jingle chiming as it swung open. The rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the sweet scent of pastries, but it did little to ease the knot tightening in her stomach. Henry was already seated in a corner booth by the window, his demeanor revealing a mix of anticipation and anxiety. His gaze scanned the cafe as if seeking familiarity in the faces that walked by, yet it faltered the moment it landed on Sara. A distant reflection played over his features, a mix of hope and desperation for connection. "Hey, thanks for coming," he said, his voice warm, almost magnetic. Sara searched his eyes for sincerity but found shadows of uncertainty lingering. "Thanks for inviting me," she replied, trying to match his neutrality. She slid into the seat across from him, both of them awkwardly avoiding the weight of their previous interactions. Henry leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "I know we've had our disagreements. But I really want to understand your perspective. Your email hit hard. It challenged me in ways I didn't expect. Sara felt her resolve waver for a moment, but she quickly steeled herself. And what exactly do you plan to do with that understanding? She asked, her voice steady despite the tremor underlying it. Promises are just words until you show us differently. He nodded, a flicker of admiration igniting in his eyes. I get that. I'm not here just to talk, but to listen to what you want for this community, for your son. As they spoke, the coffee cups transformed into vessels of connection. Words flowed freely, truths poured out, and barriers began to crumble. Sara found her voice growing bolder as she shared not just her fears but her dreams for a better future. She spoke of better schools, safer neighborhoods, and support for local businesses, the myriad facets that made up her world. Henry listened intently. The weight of his own experiences began to unwind within him, revealing the man he wanted to be, one who could bridge the gap between potential and reality. I want to create opportunities, not just for the affluent, he promised, conviction lacing his tone. But actions will speak louder than my words. Their conversation deepened into the night, touching on hopes too often silenced by reality. For the first time, Sara saw glimmers of serious commitment in his eyes, but lingering doubt gnawed at her. Could one meeting shift the long-standing patterns of mistrust? Were they truly on the cusp of something transformative? Just as uncertainty began to creep back into her thoughts, Henry leaned closer, lowering his voice as if to share a secret. Sara, there's something I've been meaning to tell you. The next words hung in the air, charged with potential. They were the kind of words that could align paths or wreck dreams. Sara held her breath, the moment stretching thin, filled with a world of possibilities. What could he reveal? And would it draw them together or push them further apart? At that moment, outside the cafe, the sky lit up with the birth of a new day, leaving behind the shadows of doubt. The future beckoned, precarious yet filled with hope. Would they take the leap together, or would they step back into their separate lives, forever wondering what could have been? Sara's heart raced as she waited, the air thick with unspoken tension. Henry's gaze intensified, his usual confidence momentarily flickering. I know my family has always been on one side of this issue, he began slowly, measuring each word. But I didn't choose this path. I want to do better. I want to be involved in meaningful change. His sincerity hit her like a wave. It was a fresh breeze blowing away the suffocating doubts. Sara could feel her walls starting to crack. What do you mean? She asked, curiosity peeking through her hardened exterior. He hesitated, the weight of his family's legacy pressing down on him. I've been talking to some people lately, people who know my father and the system he created. They're willing to help, but I can't do this alone. I need ideas, real plans. Sara leaned in, her intuition sparking. Are you saying you want my input? The community's input? Henry nodded, his expression earnest. Yes. My father might have built this empire, but it's time for it to evolve. He doesn't see the pain just outside his window. I've seen it. I've felt it. And I can't ignore it anymore. There was an urgency in his tone that drew her in. For the first time, Sara felt a flicker of hope. If Henry was serious, if he truly wanted to make a difference, perhaps they could turn this tide together. Still, there was a lingering fear. But what if this is just talk? How do we ensure it leads to real change? Henry's eyes met hers, burning with determination. That's where you come in. Your voice can ignite action. You know the struggles, the needs. We can rally support, create programs, fund initiatives. Together, we can bring a bridge to this divide. The weight of his proposal sank in. It sounded too idealistic, too risky. What if people see this as just another attempt by the privileged to soothe their guilt? She countered, skepticism creeping back in. Then I'd tell them to look at my actions, Henry replied firmly. If they don't see change, I want them to call me out. I don't want lip service, I want accountability. I want your perspective to hold me accountable. His conviction resonated, a deep honesty radiating from him. Sara realized this wasn't he the man she had prepared to argue with. He was different now, open, vulnerable. Okay, let's say I'm in. Where do we start? She asked, her instincts shifting from doubt to possibility. With a faint smile, Henry pulled out a notebook from his bag, flipping it open to reveal pages scrawled with ideas, names, and plans. Let's brainstorm together. Every voice matters. Let us map out what our community truly needs. They dove headfirst into the details, their voices rising over the soft hum of the cafe. Each idea brought a renewed excitement, each flourish of pen against paper felt like a crack through the shell that had surrounded them both. For a fleeting moment, the past seemed insignificant compared to what they could create. As they laid the groundwork, Sara felt her heart swell with the warmth of collaboration. They were no longer stuck in the same patterns of division. This could be the beginning of something powerful. But beneath the surface, an uneasy question nagged at her: was Henry prepared to face his family's inevitable resistance? Outside, the sun dipped lower, the cafe's light blending into the vibrant hues of twilight. Sara's heart quickened again, not just from excitement but from a growing fear. Was the world ready for this change? Would Henry truly stand by her when the real challenges arose? Just as she was about to voice her thoughts, Henry looked at her, a spark in his eye as he said, "You know, there's one more thing I haven't mentioned that could change everything." His words sent a thrill down her spine. What else was he hiding? How deep did this commitment go? And what would it mean for them as partners in this endeavor? Henry leaned closer, his intense gaze locking onto Sara's. The air around them seemed to hum with possibility, but it also crackled with tension. "I've been working on a secret project," he admitted, his voice low. "It's not just about local initiatives. I want to drive national conversations. I'm meeting with influential figures next week, and I want you there with me." Her breath caught in her throat. "You want me to meet these people? They want to listen to me." "Yes, they will," he insisted, a hint of passion coursing through his words. "They need to hear the voices of those who are directly affected. Your experience is invaluable. I want to bring your story to the forefront." A part of her wanted to dismiss it, to tell him that no one cared about her background, her struggles. But another part, a stronger part, felt a flicker of excitement. Could she really have a seat at the table? Henry reached across the small cafe table, his hand brushing against hers. "We can create something impactful together, Sara. But I can't do it without you. You know firsthand what needs to change. You've seen it. You've lived it." She pulled her hand back, unsure. This was more than a big ask, it was a leap into uncharted territory where she could potentially expose herself to criticism, judgment. What if I screw it up? What if I say the wrong thing? Henry's expression softened. "You won tea. You're different. You have insights that can guide real conversation. I see you, I believe in you." Sara's heart warmed at those words, but doubt crept in. "But what about your family? They might not support this." "They might not, but I'll stand my ground. I can't keep living in the shadows of their legacy." His voice was steady, reassuring. "This is bigger than just us. It's about all those people suffering. We can't ignore them any longer." As the sun set, the cafe transformed into a cocoon of warmth, and Sara found herself wanting to believe him. They tossed ideas back and forth, scribbling frantically in Henry's notebook. Words like advocacy, education, and community empowerment danced between them, igniting their passion, but just as they lost track of time, a stray thought emerged. She had to know more. "What kind of people are you meeting?" "Politicians, community leaders, activists. They all have influence," he said, pausing as if weighing the options of his next words. "But there's also a chance some of them are not as open-minded as I am. And they might push back hard. The reality of it crashed down like a wave, creating ripples of anxiety in Sarah's gut. What if they shut us down? Then we push harder. We find other doors to knock on. We can't let fear stop us. Look, I know this is daunting, but think of the people who depend on change. They need us. Sara could see the fire behind Henry's eyes, the conviction that ignited his every word. Yet another question lingered: what if everything fell apart? And will you still want to do this if it costs you your family's approval? Henry hesitated, the weight of that question heavy in the air. She saw the shadow of doubt flicker across his face. I need to try. And I need you by my side. As they dug deeper into their plans for the meeting, excitement began to replace her fear. Could this truly be the beginning of something transformative? The clock on the wall ticked softly, reminding her that time was slipping away, but just as they were about to solidify their next steps, Sara felt the starkness of reality settle in again. Henry, when the backlash comes and it will, can you really stay true to this path? His look was intense, unwavering. I will. I mean it, Sara. In that moment of connection, a strange feeling passed between them, a shared understanding that this journey could radically change not only their lives but the lives of so many others. But would they be ready for the storm ahead? As Henry grabbed his bag and they stepped into the night, Sara's heart raced with both hope and fear. In the shadows, she sensed unseen challenges lurking, waiting to test their resolve, what awaited them in the days to come, and how far would they both go to fight for what they believed in. The street outside was cold, the chill in the air nipping at Sara's cheeks as she and Henry walked side by side. Streetlights cast a warm glow, but the shadows felt heavier tonight. Thoughts raced through her mind, clouds of doubt swirling amidst bright sparks of hope. Are you sure about this? She asked, almost as a whisper. Henry turned to her, his expression serious. We've talked about it long enough. It's time to act. If we're going to make a difference, we can't just sit back. His resolve stirred something within Sara. She had felt like a spectator in her own life for too long, watching the world turn while her own dreams settled like dust. But what if this was her moment to speak? What if her voice could guide change? They approached a small park, its benches empty under the watchful gaze of the scattered trees, their branches swaying slightly in the night. The shadows danced, and for a moment, the quiet surrounding them felt like a comfort, a safe space to explore her emotions. I just keep thinking about my past, Sara confessed, hesitating. About all the times I stood up and no one listened. What if I get up there and just freeze? I know it's scary, Henry said, his voice steady. But remember why we're doing this. You're not just sharing your story, you're representing others who can't. That's powerful. Sara sighed, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. Each word was a reminder of why she had to try, why she had to believe. It feels like too much responsibility. What if I let them down? What if I let you down? Henry stepped closer, his eyes locking onto hers. You won. We're in this together, remember? You've overcome so much already. This is just one more step. Just think of who we can help. In that moment, something shifted between them. She saw it, the flicker of fire behind his determination, and felt her own spark ignite. After a long silence, Sara took a breath that felt lighter. You're right. I don't want to be quiet anymore. I want to be heard. Then let us get ready, he said, filling the night air with renewed energy. They talked long into the evening, building an outline of their presentation and mapping out key points that highlighted her struggles and dreams. Each idea flowed, fueled by an acknowledgement of the potential impact they could have. As they wrapped up, a thought struck her. What if I really do connect with someone who has the power to change things? How will I handle that? She could feel her pulse quicken at the thought of speaking her truth, of making real connections that could challenge the status quo. You'll handle it just like you are now. With honesty, with heart. You've got this, Henry reassured her, placing a supportive hand on her shoulder. Just then, the screen of his phone lit up. He glanced at it, and she watched his brows furrow slightly. Just a message from my dad, he muttered, a shadow crossing his face. No doubt about tonight. I don't want to hear it. Fears bubbled back up in Sarah's mind. The implications of his family's response could rear a storm equally as daunting as the one they were about to face. Henry, if this doesn't go well, what happens next? He took a moment, absorbing her question. Then we adjust. We adapt. We can't stop trying just because it's hard. This is just the beginning. I promise, I won't let go. His certainty was a lifeline, pulling her back from the edge of her worries. But somewhere deep inside, uncertainty loomed. As they turned to leave the park, the tension hung thick in the air. Each step forward felt monumental, yet she couldn't shake the impending dread. What if their journey wasn't just about change but about revealing truths they weren't ready to face? And as they walked into the darkening night, Sara couldn't help but wonder, would their courage be enough? Would they ever know the true weight of their choices? The following day dawned cold and gray, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. Sara stared at the emails on her screen, the words blurring together as she tried to summon the courage for her last draft. Today was the day they were meant to send everything out, the final push. Henry sat across the small table, his fingers tapping nervously on his laptop. You ready? He asked, that same mix of encouragement and concern swirling in his voice. Sara took a deep breath. I think so. But what if this backfires? The thought gripped her, tightening her stomach. The stakes felt impossibly high. We've no control over how people will react. But we do control whether we speak or stay quiet. We have a responsibility to share what needs to be said, he replied, his gaze unwavering. She nodded, swallowing her fears. There was a rush whenever she spoke truth, like she was pulling back a curtain, letting light into the room. But the shadows were thick in her mind today. Henry's phone buzzed again. He grimaced at the screen. Sorry, he muttered, embarrassment creeping in. It's my dad again. It was a reminder that family could be both support and opposition, especially with stakes this high. Are you okay? She wanted to reach out, to ease the tension on his brow. I don't know. He just doesn't get it. I mean, how could he? Henry's fingers lingered on the keys, torn between the weight of obligation and the desire for freedom. Sara watched him, feeling her own uncertainties ebb and flow like the tide. You have to do what's right for you, she said softly, remembering their talks of boundaries and self-advocacy. Just then, she looked back at her screen. The cursor blinked patiently, a reminder that it was time to act. With a deep breath, she hovered over the send button, the literal edge of change. Her pulse raced as she wondered what the outcome would be. Together on 3, Henry said, counting down. 1, 2. Wait. Panic flashed through her. This was at the point of no return. What if my words aren't enough? They're more than enough. You've lived them, they're yours. His encouragement washed over her, pushing past the fear that gripped her throat. 3. They both pressed the button at once. The emails shot into the digital ether, a collective gasp escaping their lips. Sara felt lightheaded, the sudden release of tension both exhilarating and terrifying. What now? Now, we wait. And we rally people around us. You know, this isn't just about one email, it's about starting a dialogue, Henry said, his eyes brightening with possibility, but a lingering doubt nudged at her. But what if no one responds? What if no one cares? Henry's face softened, understanding her fear all too well. We can't control the audience's reaction, but we can create the space for it. You'll find the people you need. They'll come to your story. With that thought, the weight of their actions settled in. How many lives were interwoven with hers? The prospect of change felt more possible now that they had taken the leap. As the hours dragged on, the silence was deafening. Sara found herself peeking at her phone every few minutes, waiting for that telltale ping that would confirm someone, anyone, had engaged with their message. Suddenly, Henry's phone lit up with a notification, accompanied by an unmistakable rush of excitement. "It's from my dad," he said cautiously, no hint of the expected enthusiasm. "Open it." He hesitated, glancing at her, and in that moment, the air thickened again with unspoken possibilities. What would it say? Would it be supportive? Dismissive? Sara's heart raced with dread and hope, wondering if this was the moment where everything shifted. What had they actually unleashed? Would their courage invite validation or judgment? And then, with a shaky hand, Henry pressed his thumb to the screen, and together, they inhaled the breath of anticipation. Henry's thumb hovered nervously over the screen, the glow illuminating the lines of uncertainty etched on his face. As he finally leaned in to read, Sara felt a knot tighten in her chest. Each second stretched like an eternity. What was in that message? "Don't keep me in suspense." She blurted out, her own anxiety spilling over. He blinked, eyes darting between the screen and her face. He read it, he stammered, disbelief mingling with relief. Sara leaned closer, her heart pounding. "And?" "He said he's going to share it." "What?" Her mouth fell open. "Share it? With who?" "His board," Henry replied, before a small smile broke through the worry. "With his team. He thinks it's important." Her heart soared and plummeted all at once. "That's amazing, but, does he really understand?" Henry's smile faded a touch, replaced by a hesitant furrow of his brow. "I think he's trying to. But he's still, my dad. His support will take time, I guess." Sara's eyes wandered back to her own phone, feeling the weight of her words. What if they sparked something monumental? She whispered, "What if he understands more than we think?" "I hope so," Henry said, a flicker of newfound hope dancing in his eyes. "But let us not get ahead of ourselves. Let us see how people react. You have to brace yourself, okay?" A small laugh escaped her lips, barely hiding the trepidation shadowing her heart. "Bracing is becoming my new specialty." The day passed in surreal bursts of time, each tick of the clock marked by another anxious glance at her phone. Notifications trickled in, inboxes flashed red, social media notifications pinged. It was overwhelming. As she scrolled through messages that ranged from heartfelt thanks to sharp criticisms, the whirlwind of reactions spilled into her soul. Some people resonated with her words, sharing their stories of struggle and resilience, while others seemed to dismiss her candidness, noting that vulnerability had no place in the corporate world. Every notification rang loud in her ears, a reminder of that leap they had taken together, of the weight of their voices. "Henry," she exclaimed suddenly, as she stumbled upon a particularly moving reply from a reader. "Look at this." He leaned over her shoulder, the warmth of his body nearby offering a sense of comfort. "What does it say?" "It's someone from my old college. She says she feels validated. That my story gave her the courage to speak up at her job." A grin spread across Henry's face. "See? You're making a difference already." But doubts loomed. What if it's just one person? What if everyone else pushes back? Henry tilted his head, a small frown forming. But one person can start a chain reaction, can't they? You may inspire more than you know. Just as she began to feel the embers of hope igniting, her phone buzzed again. A new message from the head of the company loomed on her screen, casting a shadow of doubt back into the room. The sender's name glared at her, and she held her breath as she opened it. What had he said? Henry's expression mirrored her own. What now? Tension wrapped around them tightly. Sara's fingers trembled as she read the first line, which was both a question and an invitation. We need to talk. Your words have started a discussion that could be far-reaching. Her heart did a flip. What did that mean? Together again? Henry whispered, his voice laced with optimism. If it means creating change, I'll keep talking, she replied, renewed determination rising within her. But as she prepared for the dialogue ahead, that familiar fear clawed at the edges of her mind. Would her voice truly matter in their worlds? Just before they could breathe in the moment, Sarah's phone buzzed with another notification, but this time, the message stopped her cold. The subject line read, "Actions speak louder." Her heart sank. What lay behind the veil? Henry caught her eye, a silent question unspoken between them. What now? She held her breath, bracing for whatever awaited her. Every second stretched as she prepared to dive deeper into uncharted waters. Sara took a deep breath, her heart racing. The words "actions speak louder" echoed in her mind like a drumbeat. She felt a mix of dread and anticipation as she clicked to open the message. What if this was a call to accountability? Henry leaned in closer, his breath warm against her neck. What does it say? He urged, his voice barely above a whisper. The email opened to reveal a short but heavy message. The CEO wanted to meet, not just to discuss the effects of her words but to share his own perspective on the corporate culture they inhabited. He wanted to explore what true change looked like. Wow, she exhaled, trying to process the weight of it. He wants to meet me? Yes. That's amazing. But he hesitated. Are you ready for that? Her heart vaulted. Meeting the CEO felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, ready to dive but doubting if the water was deep enough below. I don't know. What if he wants to push me back? What if he thinks I went too far? Henry turned to her, an understanding glimmer in his warm eyes. You're not alone in this. Remember, the fact that he wants to talk means something. People like him don't just engage with anyone. But it's risky, she said, folding her arms tight around herself. What if he's only doing this to quiet the noise? Or worse, what if he just wants to shut me down completely? Then you'll be prepared, Henry said, confidence spilling into his voice. You've already started the conversation. This is just another step. Her mind raced. She had opened the door, but now it felt like she was walking into uncharted territory. The possibility of transformation ignited something deep within her, a flicker that didn't want to die. Okay, she finally said, straightening her posture with a blend of resolve and fear. I'll do it. If speaking out means they will listen, then I need to be brave. With each passing moment, a surge of adrenaline coursed through her. But alongside that excitement was an uneasiness, the gnawing fear of potential fallout. What would it mean for her to face him? Her phone buzzed again, causing her heart to skip. Another notification, another message from someone in her network responding to her initial post. Henry, I can't keep up. He chuckled, it's a good kind of chaos, right? As she read through more responses, a pattern emerged. The warmth of encouragement flooded in, a stark contrast to the few detractors who still lurked in the background, eager to undermine her. With every supportive message, she felt her resolve strengthen. But then, a sharp ping broke her train of thought. An anonymous message read, I hope you're not ready to get burned. Her breath caught in her throat. The sudden chill tempered her excitement, reminding her of the dangers that lay ahead. Let it go, Henry said, as if sensing her inner turmoil. Focus on the positive. You're opening eyes. I know. It's just so much pressure. She admitted, the weight of expectation feeling heavier with every passing moment. Henry stepped in closer, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. You're not just a voice. You're a catalyst for change. You can't be afraid to embrace this moment. His belief felt like an anchor, steadying her in the storm. But as hope mingled with fear, she turned her gaze back to her phone, still buzzing with replies. The voice of doubt echoed again viciously, and she whispered, but will I be enough? Henry didn't hesitate. You are enough. Just be yourself. With those words, something shifted within her. Maybe she could be the change they all needed to see. Maybe this conversation with the CEO was a new beginning. As she felt that simmering determination rise, her phone buzzed yet again, a final message slipping through her anxious fingers. It read, "Meet me tomorrow at 3 p.m. Let us make this conversation count." Sara clenched her jaw, anxiety tightening in her chest. Tomorrow felt too soon. Could she really step into that meeting? Could her voice steer the ship toward something truly transformative? Henry caught her eye again, the resolve between them unspoken but palpable. "You've got this." But as Sara prepared for the inevitable, her mind raced with the endless possibilities of how things could unfold. What awaited her in that meeting? Was she ready to challenge not just her fears but the very foundations of the way they operated? The sun dipped lower, casting shadows across the room, and she took a moment to breathe. Each decision led to where she stood now, daring to turn the tide and question everything. The question lingered in the air, heavy and electric. What would she say when she finally faced him? As the dawn broke the next day, casting warm light through the curtains, Sara stood at the mirror, her heart pounding. She adjusted the collar of her blouse, fighting to steady her breath. Today was the day. Today was a leap into the unknown, a moment filled with immense possibility. She thought about Kevin at school and her neighbors who believed in her. It was more than just her voice on the line, it was theirs too. Downstairs, Henry was already waiting with a small stack of papers and a pen, both symbols of action and intent. His expression was a blend of excitement and concern as he glanced up at her. "You ready?" he asked, his eyes bright like expectant stars in the early morning sky. "I think so," she said, her fingers trembling as she grabbed her notes. "I guess all we can do now is go and share ideas." Driving toward the corporate headquarters felt like a fast-paced movie with scenes flashing by, each thought competing for dominance, all the fears, the doubts, and the flickers of hope. The towering building loomed ahead, a giant symbol of the obstacles they were ready to confront. When they arrived, Sara's stomach churned with anticipation. "What happens if I don't say what I really want to say?" She voiced her concern as they stepped into the sleek, modern lobby, filled with polished surfaces and muted colors. "You will," Henry replied confidently, walking beside her. "You'll find the right words when it matters. Just remember who you're fighting for." In the elevator, silence enveloped them, broken only by the soft ding announcing each floor. As they reached the top, Sara's heart skipped. She was about to face not just a CEO, but a legacy, a system, and everything it meant. The meeting room was vast and intimidating. A long, elegant table stretched across the room, lined with ambitious-looking executives. The CEO, a man with sharply defined features and an iron grip on power, stood waiting. As they entered, he extended a hand toward them, a thin smile on his lips. "Sara, Henry. Glad you could make it. I want to hear your thoughts." For a moment, she faltered. The weight of the room felt heavy, but then she remembered Kevin's laughter, the dreams of her community, and all the lives that warranted change. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward and locked eyes with the CEO. "I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today," she began, her voice steadying despite the racing of her heart. "I'm here because I believe in the potential of our community, and I believe that your position offers a chance to redefine what support looks like." As she spoke, eyes shifted, some filled with skepticism, others with intrigue. She recounted her experiences and the struggles faced by families depending on that school's stability. Each word felt like a step forward, their resonance echoing against the polished walls. She articulated her vision for a partnership, emphasizing that their success lay in collaboration with the community rather than a top-down approach. "Change starts with listening," she declared, her voice rising in passion. "And real change requires action not just on paper, but in our neighborhoods, our communities." The CEO nodded thoughtfully, but skepticism etched his face. And why should we invest when the returns aren't guaranteed? He countered. Because it's the right thing to do. Inaction is a choice, one that perpetuates suffering. You have the chance to lead a movement to shift the narrative from profit alone to purpose and responsibility. Imagine the impact. Henry stood beside her as supportive strength, sharing a glance filled with encouragement. This isn't just about numbers, it's about lives. If we invest in education, in creating opportunities, the returns will come in many forms: community loyalty, better citizens, even positive publicity. The temperature in the room shifted, tension loosening its grasp. Sara felt the scales of possibility teetering between doubt and revelation. Minutes felt like hours, yet in that space, connections began to emerge. Sara noticed others leaning in, those initially doubtful eyes glimmering with realization as they absorbed her words. This was not just a fairy tale, they were in living and breathing change. As the conversation flowed, the CEO's arms uncrossed. He surrendered to the vision they had painted. Their dialogue became more engaging, more collaborative. So, what's our first step? He asked, a new spark igniting his tone. Sara turned to Henry, her pulse racing with shared exhilaration. We engage with the community, gather their input. We don't just serve them, we elevate them. Let us draft a plan, Henry proposed, his enthusiasm infectious. And just like that, the room became a hive of collaboration, a turning point that transformed initial adversity into partnership. Sara couldn't believe the whirlwind they had unleashed. As they left the meeting, Sara felt a high she had never anticipated, a swirl of triumph and anxiety, but chiefly, a profound realization: change was possible. Together, they had shared their truth, and this time, they had been heard. The sun shone brightly as they stepped outside. Henry grinned at her, the distance between them and the boardroom shrinking with every step. You were amazing. Sara smiled back, a radiant warmth blooming in her chest. We were amazing. And maybe, just maybe, this was the spark they needed to ignite a journey towards hope threaded with action, one that could change everything. As they walked away from the building, hand in hand, Sara knew that neither of them would ever be the same. What they had sown together was only the beginning. They were ready to take on the world, and it was eager for their voices. Now it's your turn to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep the momentum going. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this powerful ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share. True fans understand the importance of lifting each other up.